Hi, I'm Mark Honeybone from Property Ventures, and welcome to our podcast where we interview prominent members of the investment community along with other professionals in the New Zealand property market. To check us out, take a look at propertyventures.co.nz. We hope you enjoy today's podcast.
Morning, everyone. I'm Luella Martin here from Property Legals, and I'm joined by Mark Honeybone from Property Ventures. So we thought we'd just have a chat to you this morning about, buying property, and in particular being a first-time buyer. I found this quite relevant to me, having just bought my first property. Had some quite big questions, I guess, on how to navigate this whole transaction and how to best prepare. Um, Mark is actually quite experienced in the property industry and has previously worked as a buyer's agent. So we thought he might be best placed to offer some good feedback and advice. So, Mark, if you'd like to start us off, I guess just an intro about yourself and about Property Ventures and your experience in this industry.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Luella, and thanks for inviting me along. I think it's second time I've been a guest now on your show, so pleased to help out. But yeah. So Property Ventures have traditionally we work with investors. That's how we started. So property investors rather than a first home buyer. And we, as you just said, we started off as being a buyer's agent. So we helped investors in this case buy property, and part of that was buying them good property that's going to suit their situation. We've sort of changed over the last 7 years, where we now, I guess, over half of our deals we do are for normal home buyers, and in particular, the last few years has been first home buyers, actually with new builds more than anything. But doesn't matter if it's an older one or new build. We've helped quite a few people, and it's interesting. I've always said buying compared with investment property was your own property. You have to buy really, really well was really important. But I've always said if it's your own property, it's not quite so important if it's a house you want to live in. But with first home buyers, it's usually their first inch, like you've just experienced your first entry into property. You haven't got an unlimited amount of money to spend on that property. You've got a budget, and there's a whole lot of things you have to look at to make sure you're not buying a lemon, basically, and putting yourself in a financial risk.
Yeah, no, totally.
Yeah, so you've been more than me, and you just brought one lately, wouldn't you?
Yeah. I settled about a month late due to COVID, but we got there in the end. I think it took us 6 months of sort of solid searching every weekend to finally find one. But yeah, you definitely have to weed through quite a few lemons to find the best investment. Um,
Yep.
I guess we also you buy a first home and you want the future if you end up renting it out or selling it. It's got to be something that works with how your plans might change in the future. That's also something I guess we took into consideration.
Yeah, and that's one of the very
I guess
important
my
things is.
first question.
Oh,
Yeah,
sorry, that's what
you
you said,
go.
but yeah, one of the important things is with the you've got to sell that property sometime down in the future, and so you always want to
Yeah,
buy a property that other people are going to want to buy. So that's something really to be aware of. And there's a lot of factors with that, such as at the schools around the neighbourhood. Are you close to public transport, especially in somewhere like Auckland, where public transport is critical. A lot of houses have been built these days without car parks, which I don't like at all, but the council are allowing
yeah,
it. So public transport and schooling and shops are obviously all really key things for what you should be looking at, not only for yourself, but for when you do sell one day, and you will want to sell one day.
yeah. No, totally. I think my first key question was, I think we kind of touched on this when we talked about doing this interview. I guess the difference between working with a buyer's agent and a vendor's agent, and the difference, I guess, in the duty you owe to the people you work with or your clients. If you could just kind of touch us on that distinction and the fiduciary duties you might owe.
Yeah, no, it's really important, and there's two understandings of what a buyer's agent is. But first of all, the normal seller's agent that everyone's aware of, and the usual way real estate's done in New Zealand, is the real estate agents working for the vendor of the property, trying to get the best price they can for that property, and they pay a lot of money to do that, and so their obligations are purely to do that, do it properly, do it well. We still have legal obligations with the purchaser that we can't lie. We have to tell them the truth. And if we know there's anything majorly wrong with the property, like if we know it's a leaker, we have to tell the purchaser that it is a leaker. If we don't know, well, we obviously can't tell. But most of our obligations are for the vendor, working for them because they're paying us. Now, within that, the really good agents in an agency will have a team. So there'll be a guy, girl who'll be the main agent, and they might have a team of 2 or 3, 4 people. And amongst those people, they might have what they call a buyer's agent, not really a buyer's agent, but they'll call themselves a buyer's agent. And what that means is they work with the buyers for the agency to sell them a property. The obligations are still all with the vendor of the property, but because if they're selling 20, 30 properties at the same time, the one agent can't do everything, so they hire someone to talk to the people like the listeners here who want to buy a property for the first time. So that's a standard, we'll say, seller's agency, and that's the agency that we all sort of know of. About sort of 5 to 7 years in New Zealand, the thing called the buyer's agency come in, and that's where we started at Property Ventures originally. And that's where it's basically like a real estate agency tipped upside down, where our obligations are with the purchaser because they're paying us, the real estate agent, to go and find them a property. And then it's in total reverse. We have no obligations really at all to the vendor of the property. We're just trying to get the property, the right property for as good a conditions and better price than you can, sort of thing. So yeah, so that's sort of the differences between a buyer's agency and a normal seller's agency.
Yeah. And so we're touching on that. Would you recommend, if you're trying to buy your first home, you just stick with one buyer's agent? And in doing that, how would you pick, I guess, the best agent to work with and what you're sort of looking for?
Yeah, to be fair, if you're buying your first home, you can use a buyer's agent, but normally you have more success if you've got time, more success looking at, and it's hard. Don't get me wrong, it's damn hard. To go around, you want to expose yourself to as many agents and tell as many people that you're looking for a property, and then you'll and hopefully do it. If you hire a buyer's agent, you have to use one that is really out there in that particular market that you are trying to get into. Where if you as a buyer go out to a lot of agents, you go first of all, look at some best agents in that area. Look who's doing all the deals, and if you're looking at Cherry South, for example, look at all the agents that are doing the deals in Cherry South. You go on Trade Me, you see the big ads that go on front, and you see the same names appearing. Well, they might be a goodish place to start, because one, they're picking up a lot of listings and they know about a lot of properties that are going to come on the market. So, and that's what you want to do. If you're looking at someone like a new build, for example, it's one of the things we specialise with. Come and talk to someone like us, because we all deal with new builds all around Auckland. But so it depends on what you're looking at buying, but just get yourself known to the best around the area that you're looking at buying. And most people are after 1 or 2 areas, I guess, close to where they work or close to mum and dad or whatever it might be.
Yeah. And so, I guess we've had quite a few first-time buyers who they end up working with kind of one agent, but over a lot of different areas, I guess, because they're not really sure where they can buy, what's best suited. Would you recommend focusing your search, I guess, on 1 or 2 areas, or kind of spread yourself a bit widely in your search for a first home?
Well, that depends, as I said, on the individual, where they want to do, where they want to. But it's really a case by case situation. As far as a good agent will talk to the first time buyer and say, "Oh, look after all your needs, and I'm going to go and find and do a work-ins with everyone." And if you get someone you really gel with and like, certainly do that. That's really important. And don't feel as though you're not being loyal to them by going and talking to some other agents for some property, because they'll have some, but a lot of agents out there, unfortunately, in the real estate game, don't like doing work-ins with other people, with other agents. Now, the good agents do. We all do work-ins. We do many of them, but a lot of them don't. So if you just stick with one agent only and rely on them to find your property, you're really missing out on a lot of opportunities out there, because a lot of agents just won't do it, especially some of the cheaper percentage agencies out there. They won't do a work-in because there's not enough commission to go around. So they won't talk to the other agents out there. So it's really important that you go to go to all the, as I said, use the Te South as an example, go to all the agencies that are working around there, find the best agent or an agent you're comfortable with in that area. And even in that office, you might find someone you really gel with, and they can try to find you, people within that office, even though some offices don't work that well together either. But but yeah, for that reason though, is don't limit yourself to one person. Get someone by all means, but still look around and still do your research.
Yeah, don't cut yourself short. I guess keep your options open.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Do you have any other feedback, I guess, in terms of like once you find a house you like, sort of trying to put your best foot forward, make an offer, and actually secure a property, whether that be, I guess, at auction or putting in a conditional offer? I know that you previously worked as a buyer's agent, though.
Yeah, there's a lot of things. The first thing is, I guess, finding the right property and where's the price, and that's the hard thing. What is when you first start out, what was a price of a property? So, if you start working with 2 or 3 agents or 4 agents, and when you start looking around after 3 or 4 weeks, you start getting an idea of what places are worth. And by saying that, I mean you've met a few agents, you go to a whole lot of open homes. Some might have a price or price per negotiation. Some are going to be auctions. If you find properties you like, ring up the agent after it's sold and ask what it's sold for. As soon as it's unconditional, they can tell anybody what it's sold for. So that's there's no other way of finding out what an area or place is worth until you do that. Just a wee trick is, well, not a trick, but something to be aware of, is some streets on the left side and the right side might be worth a considerable amount of difference in price. And for example, I've just moved recently from Coates Avenue, Raki, and I was on the downside of the road, and the places on the other side of the road, which a little bit higher, were worth anywhere from $200,000 to $500,000 dearer. If you'd based all your stuff on the lower side, and you might be wondering why you're missing out at auctions by $400,000 or $500,000, that might be a reason why. Or one end of the street might be a bad house or something down there that makes it cheaper, or vice versa. So you can only do that by attending lots of open homes, talking to agents, getting there, finding out for yourself, what it is. And that's sort of how you start getting prices. Really lucky these days. You've got places like homes.co.nz. What else is called? What's the other one at the moment?
One Roof.
One Roof, where you can actually go and they tell you a lot of information, and they also give you an idea of what their high, medium, low prices are, and they're important. Don't take them as gospel though, because they're not. They don't necessarily find all the trends out in the last sort of 2 months, but it gives you an idea, I guess. So it gives you an idea of something that's worth $600,000 or $1 million, and that could be a massive difference for the first home buyer. So that's good also to do it. But when you're looking, if you're really serious about a property, unfortunately with auctions you have to do this first, but I'd rather get done the contract and then do it afterwards. Spend $500, $700 or $800, whatever it costs, to get a builder's report, because what you don't want are unfortunate hidden problems with a property. And for sake of spending $600 or $700, you could save yourself tens of thousands of dollars by doing that, especially when you're inexperienced. And everyone goes on about the plaster buildings and monoclinic cladding, which is something certainly to be made aware of. Some people just don't buy them. I still will, depending on the history and what it is. You might have a good brick and tile place that has some obscure wee corners that hasn't been done properly, and it's been leaking for the last 10 years and nobody knows yet because no one's really looked at it. Asbestos is another thing. These are all just words to be very, very aware if you ever are looking, as a first home buyer, when you haven't really got the experience with it. Other things are like compliance. Has the place got compliance? Does it? When you walk around a place, sometimes you can see this place looks different than it would have, I think, 30 years ago, 50 years ago when it was built, and might have been rooms added to it or whatever. Find out that it has got compliance. You may have to go to the council. You can start off by asking the agent. Make sure it's got CCC was issued when the place was built 5 years ago or 50 years ago. We dealt with a few years ago. they were plaster places about 10 years old, and they didn't have CCC, which meant the bank wouldn't actually lend any money against them. So these are all different bits and pieces to be aware of, and what you're looking for when you're looking through a house, and I guess questions to ask and things to be aware of, because what you don't want, if you've maximised all your money and you're at the limit and you can't afford anything to go wrong, you don't want anything to go wrong. So, in fact, just one extra thing I add on there is a lot of banks and brokers these days will give you, when you get your mortgage, they might give you a $1,000 or $2,000 kickback when you do it. I'm not sure what happened with you.
Yeah, the cash contribution offer.
Yeah, so if you're paying $700 for a builder's report, or even have to get a valuation or whatever it might be, you probably don't get that money back anyway, which is quite good. You might have to borrow it from someone to start off with if you haven't got it. But
better to be safe than sorry.
Yeah, but I'd rather check that out. People were reluctant of spending money on builders reports and stuff, but it's the most important thing to do, especially when you're inexperienced.
Yeah, I guess when you've got quite a limited budget already, you don't want to go and I guess buy quite a risky property, which could have quite expensive things you've got to remedy once you get in there.
Yeah, but then
oh yeah, you go.
I think then you haven't spent that, and then you find out something I never knew till 10 years ago. Ducks Quest Plumbing, and the plumbing was used for about 4 or 5 years, about 15 years ago or 20 years ago, and it's very well known for being behind the jib, and they come apart, and it can cause you thousands and tens of thousands of dollars of damage, and to re-plumb it can cost you another tens of thousands of dollars to do.
Yeah, definitely. I also found when you're looking at like the listing for a property and you compare that to what's actually there, if things aren't in the listing description but they're at the house, they might likely not be consented, hence they haven't been, I guess, advertised. That was quite a early trick I found. But yeah, coming from someone who actually didn't get a builder's report done on the house, definitely better to be safe than sorry. Probably should have.
Yeah, and if you're unsure of anything with that, if the other thing with that, I just thought of when you were saying that with the sale and purchase agreements, or if it's not listed and it's there, the great thing about a house and negotiating is a negotiation. So there might be something there they hasn't. It appears it's not for sale or whatever it is. You can negotiate anything on a sale and purchase agreement. You might see a beautiful picture that just makes that wall. It might be a fountain or something they were going to take away. You can negotiate to leave that in their house. So anything's negotiable. Just because the agent says whatever, you can ask a question and try to negotiate anything as part of the deal. That includes long settlements or even a little bit less commission or not commission, deposit or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
We've it hard with an option, but you still can. But
every transaction is like different. There's always a different purchaser, different vendor, different house. You can negotiate kind of any part of it, really. It's all moving pieces in a jigsaw. But
and keep that in mind when you're negotiating, if it's not an option, when you're negotiating, because you might be a 90-year-old that's just looking at going to a retirement home. It might be a 40-year-old that's got themselves in trouble, or something's happened, or they have to move quickly. That's a part of the deal, and that's a part of the thing. When property investors start out, they get trained, or if they go to courses or whatever, they get training on how to buy a good deal. It appears, first home buyers never get told that you're getting buy discount. We've sold some new builds and where they've come in early and brought them a year or so before they've been finished, and they've made themselves $40,000 or $50,000, which people don't even know they can do when they first go out there to buy a home, which is a wee bit sad, because they should, and because if you can save 10% when you first buy a property, even for a first home, that just puts you in such a good place going forward.
Yeah, I guess whether or not you sell it on or hold on to it.
Either or, that's right.
And then I guess just last question, have you noticed, particularly over the last couple of months and with lockdown, like changes in demand and supply? I think when I was looking, I just found that properties were spending less and less time on the market, and we were just you have to be like faster and faster in your property hunt. Have you found anything around that, or advice for first home buyers?
Yeah, and unfortunately for the listeners who are listening here, it's because I want to buy a property for first home. Now is one of the worst times I've ever seen for the market, as in favour of the vendor. And there's a whole lot of reasons for that. COVID has certainly not help the buyer. Because I could actually talk about for 2 hours about this, which I won't, about some of the rules the governors have made recently that has stopped investors selling property. So there's a lot of reasons why places haven't gone on the market at the moment. And so there's just a big lack of, if you talk to agents out there, there's a lack of property, and some agents aren't getting fed because they can't get a listing. So and at the same time, there are more buyers than I've probably ever seen at the moment. So that makes it pretty tough, and that's why you have to see the prices have gone up a lot. Even over COVID, they've gone up. That's the reason why. It's because there's a massive demand for property, and the property not there to buy at the moment. I do think, particularly with the rules the government brought in for investors, I can see in the next 2 to 4 years a lot of property coming back on the market. It goes in cycles anyway, and there's reasons why those cycles happen. But I do see, if you're in no hurry, I see 2 to 4 years being a really good time to buy, because I think there will be quite a few properties on the market. But right now it's hard places to go on the market. We listed one last week; it was sold next day. It's pretty difficult to do. Yeah,
you certainly got to have your ducks in a row before you go to view, so that you can be quite quick, I guess, if you're going to make an offer.
Yeah. If I add one thing, I'm not sure if you're going to cover or not, but just with auctions, or buying at an auction, especially when you're a first home buyer, and I guess a little bit inexperienced at that, is a few things. Go to as many auctions as you can to see what they're like. That's the first thing, and find out. And especially if you're looking at bidding an auction with a particular brand, go to that brand or their offices and brands auctions, because they all run a little bit different. And you'll soon learn how they work. There's nothing. People used to think auctions were really dodgy. They're not. If the auctioneer is bidding for what she tells you at the start of or he or she tells you at the start of the auction anyway, that they're bidding for the vendor. If there's no prices or hasn't got high enough, it's not dodgy. It just hasn't got high enough yet, and that's what it is. But with the biggest recommendation with auctions is make sure you know. And I'm not saying everyone will say this, make sure you know what you'll pay. But I mean, make sure you really, really know what you can pay for the property as a maximum. And I remember helping a young lady out a few years ago. She was she's an investor, but she was buying her own property, her first property. And I remember we sat in the car talking about what we're going to do before the auction started. And she said, if you guys said, what's the highest you'll go to? She goes, 760. And I said, okay, 760, that's cool. I said, if it goes to 765, you'll walk away. Oh, no, I'll bid 770. And so we played this silly game for a while, and we got to 800, and we got to, I think, 808,000. And she said to me, actually at 808, I'm happy. There are other places out there, and that's that sort of thing. I said, that's what I wanted to hear. And luckily we did that, because we went in the auction, and I was a bold bidder for the majority of the auction. There was a lot of people bidding, and would you believe it got to 800? Then there was myself and a chap just in front of me started going $1,000 intervals, and I was still acting bolshy and bold like I had the whole way through, even though I was starting to get pretty nervous and scared underneath. And got to 806, and the other guy stopped. He didn't go to 807, and she brought the property, and she's really, really happy that she got it. But if he went one higher, then I would have looked a drip. Yeah, then I would have looked a drippy mess. I wouldn't have been in control, and we wouldn't have got it. So if you know exactly what you can go to, what it is, be happy that you can walk away after that. But you can be quite bold and confident all the way through. People, the more experienced people, look for weaknesses in bidders, I guess, at auctions. So there's my wee tip. I love telling that story, but it's a true story, and it's really important. That you really, really know what you'll go to when you bid at an auction.
I certainly learned to bid like you've got a much higher budget than you do, and bid like really quick and fast. And
100%.
Obviously,
and also just remember with auctions, if you have to go to an auction, you can still negotiate things, even though it might say it's 10% deposit, and these are the chattels, blah blah blah, and this is the date. You can still do it before the auction. Renegotiate a settlement date, the deposit, and whatever it might be, or that picture on the wall I spoke about. And they just do a wee side agreement before, and the vendor knows if you buy the property, the conditions are slightly different. So Yeah.
Awesome. So I think that's all we've got time for today. But if anyone has really enjoyed this chat with Mark, you can actually check out his podcast on Spotify. I believe it's just called Property Ventures, and you'll be able to find it.
The New
And
Zealand Property Podcast. There you go.
there we go. And you can check out all of our free videos as well and our free property guides. But yeah, thank you for tuning in, and thanks for listening in, Mark. Been very helpful.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks for having me, and I loving your podcast you guys are doing. So keep it up.
Awesome. Thank you.
See ya.
Bye.